14 million Americans currently have utility debt, so severe it has been sent to collections. 1 in 6 American households, 21.2 million people, are behind on their energy bills right now, before summer has even started. And 1 in 5 households report that they have reduced or gone without food and medicine, specifically to pay their energy bills. That is the starting position. That is where American families stand today, in late April, before the air conditioning turns on, before the schools close, before the summer food gap opens, before the Iran war inflation cascade lands in the grocery aisle, before the electricity bills that broke records last summer break those records again. June is not a month. June is a financial event. It is the month when every seasonal cost that punishes American families converges with every structural cost increase that has been building since the pandemic, and the combination will break household budgets that are already running on fumes, credit cards, and prayer. And I am going to walk you through exactly what June looks like for the average American family, line item by line item, bill by bill, cost by cost. Because the people making policy in Washington have never once stood in front of an electricity bill that consumed 15% of their monthly income, while their children were home from school with no childcare, and the grocery prices climbed another 5% in a single month. They have never had to choose between the air conditioner and the prescription, between camp for the kids and the car insurance payment, between feeding the children 3 meals a day at home instead of 2 at school, and keeping the lights on. And because they have never had to make those choices, they have no idea what June looks like for American families. But I do, because the data tells the story they will not. And I want to be clear about something before we begin. This video is not about the economy. The economy is an abstraction. GDP is an abstraction. The inflation rate is an abstraction. This video is about what happens inside the 4 walls of a house in June, when both parents work, the kids are home from school, the electricity bill arrives, the grocery receipt is $80 more than it was 6 months ago. The lease renewal letter is sitting on the counter, the healthcare premium just reset, and the savings account is empty. That is not the economy. That is a real American family. Electricity bills will hit record highs, and 4 million Americans will have their power shut off before August. Americans now pay an average of $265 per month in utilities, according to a report from the Century Foundation and Protect Borrowers, up 12% from last year. And that is the average. In states with heavy cooling demand, Arizona, California, Texas, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, the average is far higher. Arizona averages $289, California averages $303, and those figures are from before the Iran war drove natural gas prices up 30% in a single month and before the summer heat arrives. Natural gas is still the largest source of American electricity at approximately 43% of total generation, according to the Roosevelt Institute. When natural gas prices rise, electricity prices rise. There is no buffer, no delay, no negotiation. The utility passes the fuel cost through to the customer, and the customer pays or the customer gets disconnected. The Federation of American Scientists documented that the combined effects of extreme heat cost the nation over $162 billion in 2024, equivalent to nearly 1% of GDP, and the electricity demand from AI data centers is compounding the pressure. Roosevelt Institute research showed that large increases in electricity demand from the AI build-out and further utility price increases from growing natural gas exports are raising the cost of generating electricity, while the cost of climate change is increasingly raising the cost of delivering power to homes. These are not temporary spikes that fade in a few months. These are structural increases in the cost of keeping a home functional. And as utility debt has spiraled, nearly 1 in 20 American households, roughly 14 million people, now have utility debt so severe it has been sent to collections or is in serious arrears, according to the Century Foundation's analysis of consumer credit data. In parts of the South and Appalachia, the rate climbs to 1 in 12. Along the Atlantic coast, and in parts of the Midwest, overdue utility balances exceed $1,500 per household. And when a household cannot pay the utility bill, the utility company disconnects service. Approximately 4 million Americans had their electricity or gas shut off in 2025, according to the National Energy Assistance Directors Association. In June, when air conditioning becomes not a comfort but a medical necessity in much of the country, disconnection is not an inconvenience. It is a health emergency. The Federation of American Scientists modeled that a concurrent heat wave and blackout event in Phoenix alone could put 1 million residents at high risk of heat-related illness, with more than 50% of the city's population potentially requiring medical care. And LIHEAP, the federal program that helps low-income families pay energy bills, has seen its funding threatened by budget proposals that would reduce assistance at the exact moment demand is peaking. The families who need cooling assistance in June are the families whose bills have been climbing for 3 straight years and whose debt has already been sent to collections. June does not arrive as a fresh month for these families. It arrives as the next installment in a crisis that has been compounding since 2022. And here is what makes this June's electricity bills categorically worse than any June before it. The Iran war that began on February 28 sent natural gas prices surging by more than 30% in March. Natural gas generates 43% of American electricity. That fuel cost increase is already being passed through to utility customers in the form of higher generation charges on their monthly statements. But the pass-through operates on a 1 to 2 month billing cycle lag, which means the full impact of the March natural gas spike will appear on June electricity bills at the exact moment that cooling demand begins. The timing is catastrophic. Families who ran their heaters through a winter that was already more expensive than the previous year, who are already behind on utility payments, who already have debt in collections, will open their June electricity bill and see 2 cost increases stacked on top of each other: the structural rate increase from the natural gas spike and the seasonal increase from air conditioning usage. And the American electrical grid is simultaneously under pressure from AI data center construction. With up to 40% of data centers' total yearly energy consumption driven by cooling systems, peak demand during the hottest days puts additional strain on a grid that the Department of Energy has documented needs $1.4 trillion in infrastructure investment. When grid demand exceeds capacity, utilities implement rolling blackouts or demand response curtailments that shut off power to residential customers to protect industrial and commercial loads. The families whose power gets shut off during a heat wave are not the families in the luxury high-rises. They are the families in the neighborhoods with the oldest infrastructure, the lowest political representation, and the least ability to advocate for grid priority. And when Hurricane Beryl hit in 2024, more than 2 million Texans lost power during a heat wave, resulting in up to $1.3 billion in damages to electric infrastructure in the Houston area alone. One storm, one city, $1.3 billion. And the grid that failed is the same grid that is supposed to handle simultaneous cooling demand, data center demand, natural gas price volatility, and aging infrastructure in June 2026. Summer hunger is about to hit millions of children because 13 states just rejected federal food money. 13 states, all led by Republican governors, opted out of the federal Sunbucks program this summer. Sunbucks launched in 2024 and provides $120 in grocery benefits for eligible school-age children during the months when school is out. It was designed to address a problem that every school administrator and every food bank director in America knows intimately. When school ends, children who depend on free and reduced-price lunch during the academic year lose access to 2 meals per day. Rachel Sabella, director of the nonprofit No Kid Hungry New York, said that summer is the hungriest time of year for families. And the 13 states that rejected the federal money, which required approximately $6 million in state administrative costs in Tennessee's case to access $120 per child in federal benefits, chose not to feed those children. Tennessee's governor proposed a $3 million state-funded alternative that would serve approximately 4% of the 700,000 children who were served by Sunbucks the previous year. 4%. Montana turned down nearly $20 million in federal funds. And the rejections came against a backdrop that makes the summer food crisis worse than at any point in recent memory. Trump canceled a program that brings local food to schools. Food banks across the country are experiencing shortages after federal funds were cut. And at least 2 million children could experience cuts to their food benefits under the SNAP reductions in the OBBA, according to the Hetchinger report. Congress proposed cutting the monthly fruits and vegetables benefit for low-income children from $26 to $10. Cities and school districts have announced cuts or limits to summer meals independently of the state-level rejections. Oakland's summer food program was canceled. Santa Barbara's summer meal program was cut due to budget reductions. Dayton's summer meal programs reached capacity far earlier than in previous years. And nationwide, 1 in 5 children do not have enough food each day. More than 40% of summer meal program participants are children ages 5 to 8. When June arrives and school doors close, those children go from receiving breakfast and lunch 5 days a week to receiving nothing unless their parents can fill the gap. And the parents who cannot fill the gap are disproportionately the parents who are already choosing between the electric bill and the grocery bill, the parents whose utility debt has been sent to collections, the parents who are working hourly jobs with no paid time off and no affordable childcare option for the summer. The hunger is not random. It is structural. It is predictable. It happens every June. And this June it will be worse than any June in the past decade, because the safety net that was supposed to catch those children has been deliberately weakened at the federal level, rejected at the state level, and defunded at the local level simultaneously. Clarissa Douthard, a parent and family advocate in Oakland, said that the idea that in the city of Oakland, children could possibly go hungry, that the most vulnerable families would be at risk of hunger, is unimaginable. But it is not unimaginable, it is happening. And the math of summer hunger is simple and devastating. During the school year, a child receiving free breakfast and lunch gets approximately 10 meals per week at school. At an average cost of $3 to $4 per meal, the school is providing roughly $30 to $40 per week in food value per child. When school closes in June, that $30 to $40 per week transfers from the school's budget to the family's budget. For a family with 2 school-age children, the end of the school year adds $60 to $80 per week, $240 to $320 per month, in food costs that the family was not paying during the academic year. And that increase arrives at the same moment the electricity bill spikes, the childcare costs begin, and the grocery prices reflect the war-driven energy cascade. The families who are most dependent on school meals are the families who are least able to absorb a $240 to $320 per month food cost increase. They are the families who are already skipping meals themselves. 1 in 3 American adults skipped a meal in the past year due to cost, according to the Century Foundation. Among families with children eligible for free and reduced-price lunch, the rate is higher, and the Sunbucks program that was designed to bridge exactly this gap, providing $120 per child for the summer, has been rejected by 13 states covering millions of eligible children. Those children will go from 2 school-provided meals per day to whatever their families can afford. And in June 2026, with grocery prices reflecting the Iran war cascade, with electricity consuming more of the household budget, and with the broader affordability crisis consuming every dollar of income before it reaches the food budget, whatever their families can afford may not be enough. Childcare costs will explode the moment school ends, and working parents have nowhere to turn. When school lets out in June, every working parent with children under 12 faces a childcare crisis that lasts approximately 10 to 12 weeks. During the school year, the public school system provides 6 to 8 hours of daily supervision at no direct cost to the parent. When school ends, that supervision disappears, and the parent must either pay for summer camp, pay for a babysitter, reduce their work hours, or leave their children unsupervised. The average annual cost of childcare for one child topped $13,000 in 2024, according to Child Care Aware of America, up 30% from 2020. Summer camp, which is the primary childcare substitute for school-aged children, averages $300 to $600 per week per child depending on the region and the program. For a family with 2 children, summer childcare costs can reach $6,000 to $12,000 over the 10 to 12 weeks that school is out. That is equivalent to 2 to 4 months of the median American mortgage payment. And the families who cannot afford camp are the families who reduce their work hours, which reduces their income, which compounds the financial pressure from every other June cost increase. KPMG's 2026 Economic Outlook specifically warned that a freezing of federal childcare funding poses new risks because many childcare facilities rely on those funds and will close if the funding lapses. Their own research revealed that childcare disruptions have risen over 20% since before the pandemic. When a childcare facility closes, the parents who depended on it do not simply find another one. The childcare market in most American communities is already at capacity. Wait lists for infant and toddler care run 6 months to a year in most metropolitan areas. Summer camp registrations fill up months in advance. And the families who could not afford to register early because their budgets were consumed by rent, insurance, and grocery increases are the families who discover in May that every affordable summer option is full. 7 in 10 Americans said in a 2025 poll that raising a child is unaffordable, up from 58% just a year earlier. Bloomberg reported that the United States may see its first population decline in 2026. Americans are not having children because they cannot afford to have children. And the families who already have children are discovering every June that the cost of keeping those children safe, fed, and supervised during the summer exceeds the financial capacity of a growing share of American households. June is not a vacation for working families. It is a financial emergency that arrives on schedule every year and for which the American economic system provides no solution other than spend money you do not have. Grocery prices in June will reflect every dollar of war-driven energy cost that has been working through the supply chain since March. The March 2026 CPI captured the initial energy price shock from the Iran war. Energy prices rose 10.9% in a single month. Gasoline rose 21.2%. Fuel oil increased more than 30%. But those were first-order effects, the direct cost of the energy itself. The second-order effects, the increase in the cost of everything that uses energy in its production and distribution, operate on a 60 to 120-day lag. That lag lands the secondary inflation wave squarely in June. Every food product in America touches energy at multiple points. Fertilizers synthesized from natural gas whose price spiked in March. Diesel fuel that powers every tractor, combine, processing plant, truck, and refrigerated delivery vehicle. Electricity that runs every cold storage facility, every grocery store freezer, every warehouse lighting system. When energy costs rise 10%, food costs do not rise 10% in the same month. They rise 3 to 6% over the following quarter as contracts expire, as inventory purchased at old costs is sold and replaced at new costs, and as transport companies renegotiate fuel surcharges. The June CPI will be the first report that captures the full secondary cascade from the March energy shock, and it will arrive at a moment when American families are simultaneously absorbing higher electricity bills from the start of cooling season, higher childcare costs from the end of school, the loss of school meals for children who depended on them, and the cumulative 36% increase in food spending that has already occurred since 2014. Bloomberg's cost of living analysis documented that even before the Iran war, grocery and electricity prices were reaching new highs, and that delinquency rates on consumer debt climbed to the highest in almost a decade. Auto repair costs have climbed 63% since January 2020. The share of subprime borrowers at least 60 days late on their auto loans hit a new record. College fees continued climbing with student loan delinquencies rising at a record pace, and daycare costs surged 39% since 2019, according to Care.com. Every one of those cost increases predates the Iran war. Every one of them was already stretching household budgets past the breaking point. And the June grocery price increase, driven by the war-driven energy cascade, will land on top of all of them simultaneously, not one at a time, all at once, in the same month, on the same budget, for the same families who were already spending more than they earned. And the labor market that is supposed to generate the income to cover these costs is in the weakest condition since the pandemic recovery began. The Roosevelt Institute documented that 2025 was likely the worst year for job growth outside a recession in decades. The unemployment rate for workers aged 16 to 24 has been above 10% and rising for 6 months. The share of unemployed workers out of a job for 6 months or more is tied with the pre-2009 record. Average monthly employment growth has been just 17,000 since April 2025, a level that historically would signal a labor market in crisis. And the families who are absorbing June's cost convergence are doing so with incomes that have been stagnant in real terms for 5 years. Brookings confirmed that median household income adjusted for inflation was no higher in 2024 than in 2019. The income side of the equation has not changed. The cost side has changed by 30 to 80% across every essential category. And the gap between what families earn and what June costs is the gap that gets filled by credit cards, by BNPL plans, by skipping the prescription, by eating less, by turning the thermostat to 82 degrees instead of 76, and hoping nobody in the house has a heat-sensitive medical condition. The gap is not a number on a spreadsheet. It is a choice made at the kitchen table at 11 p.m. when the children are asleep, and the bills are spread across the counter, and the math does not work no matter how many times you run it. Healthcare premiums reset in June for millions, and the subsidies that kept them affordable are gone. For millions of Americans whose employer-sponsored health insurance plans operate on a June to May or July to June cycle, June is when the new premium takes effect. And 2026 premiums are reflecting the full impact of the ACA subsidy expiration, the acceleration of healthcare inflation, and the structural cost increases driven by an aging population, expensive new pharmaceuticals, and hospital consolidation. Employee premiums for family health insurance have risen 23% in just the past 5 years to nearly $6,900 per year on average, according to KFF. 2/3 of Americans worry about affording health care. And the more than 20 million people who rely on Affordable Care Act marketplace plans are facing premium increases that the Congressional Budget Office projects will cause approximately 5 million people to lose coverage entirely because they can no longer afford it. Brookings documented that the OBBA healthcare cuts that took effect January 1, 2026, included policies making it harder for low-income people to sign up for ACA coverage and ending ACA tax credit eligibility for hundreds of thousands of lawfully present immigrants. The Stanford Institute for Economic Policy Research noted that healthcare costs moved to the center of the political debate and that ACA exchange subsidies were not extended despite warnings from vulnerable Republican members. For a family earning $60,000 with 2 children, the loss of the enhanced subsidies can mean a premium increase of $3,000 to $6,000 per year, depending on age and state. That increase does not arrive gradually. It arrives in the first billing cycle of the new plan year. For families on June plan cycles, it arrives in June. On the same statement as the increased electricity bill, in the same budget as the summer childcare costs. Alongside the war-driven grocery increase, and the family that was already spending 100% of its income on essentials now discovers that one of those essentials just became 30 to 50% more expensive overnight. And the choice is not between a cheaper plan and a more expensive one. The choice is between insurance and no insurance. Between managed chronic conditions and unmanaged ones. Between catching the cancer at stage 1 and catching it at stage 3. And making that choice in June, when every other cost in the household budget is simultaneously peaking, is the specific cruelty of the American healthcare system's interaction with the American calendar. The system was not designed to hurt families in June, but June is when it hurts them the most. Rent increases take effect and lease renewals arrive, and families discover what the new normal costs. June is historically the highest volume month for lease renewals and new rental agreements in the United States. More leases expire and more new leases begin in June than in any other month, because the rental market is aligned with the school year and the summer moving season. And the rent increases that renewing tenants will see in June 2026 reflect a rental market that has repriced dramatically since the pandemic. Zillow documented that rents have increased 36% since January 2020 and 54% since 2017, according to the Urban Institute. A family that signed a lease in June 2025 at $1,700 per month may be offered a renewal at $1,785 to $1,870 depending on the market. Bemashenly said he henderder chin, a winner 7er market for medier, a tuition was edition of work frog tap the and the families who cannot absorb the increase face a choice that defines the rest of their year. They can pay the higher rent and cut spending in every other category, further compressing the grocery budget, the healthcare budget, the transportation budget, and the savings that were supposed to fund emergencies and retirement. They can move to a cheaper unit, which in most markets means a smaller unit, a worse neighborhood, a longer commute, or all three, and absorb the moving costs of first month, last month, and security deposit that typically run $4,000 to $6,000 in a mid-range market. Or they can fall behind on rent, triggering a cycle of late fees, landlord notices, and potential eviction proceedings that generates a credit record blemish lasting 7 years. None of those options is good. All of them are worse than the option the family had before the 36% cumulative rent increase that no policy response has reversed. And the 74% of Americans who told YouGov and the University of Florida that housing has grown more unaffordable in their communities are watching June approach, knowing that the lease renewal letter will arrive alongside the first full summer electricity bill, the first childcare payment, the increased grocery receipt, and the healthcare premium reset. June is when every bill peaks simultaneously, because June is when the calendar conspires against American families with a precision that no policymaker intended, but no policymaker has prevented. And for families who are renters in markets where landlords impose summer seasonal premiums, the June lease renewal is even more punishing. In tourist-adjacent markets, college towns, and seasonal zones, landlords routinely increase rents for leases beginning in June because demand peaks with the summer moving season. A family whose lease expires in June has the least negotiating leverage of any renter in any month because the landlord knows the unit will fill at the higher price. The cumulative impact over 6 years, a family paying $1,400 in June 2020 may now face $1,900 to $2,100 for the same unit, a 36 to 50% increase while their income grew at best 15 to 20% nominally and zero in real terms. Every dollar of rent increase is a dollar that does not go to food, healthcare, childcare, savings, or the credit card balance that has been growing since the last time June arrived and the budget failed to close. Share this video with every American family you know, because the information in this video is the difference between a family that sees June coming and a family that discovers it when the bills arrive in a stack that the budget cannot cover. Subscribe and turn on notifications because I will be here every week with the numbers, the data, and the truth about what it costs to be a family in America. No spin, no party line, just the bills. Take care of yourselves out there. June is coming, and you deserve to see it before it arrives.